The Susan Brender Show is a radio show online broadcasted on YouTube across the United States and globally. The show features guests who speak about health, spirituality, entertainment, and a host of subjects to enlighten people across the nation. Listen to the show that empowers women and men alike and highlights those who have made a difference.
This show is sponsored by Dillon Mitchell. He is the owner and trainer at FullPotentialCanine.com. You know, it's a very interesting thing. There are organizations that take care of animals, and they're very special. But the one that I'm really concentrating on right now is Canine Companions. And I want to introduce you to the audience. And you're Jennifer Haynes, and you're part of the Client Services Program Manager for Canine Companions in the Southeast region. Now, that is a really good job because you work with so many different people and help to really get animals noticed the way they should be and contribute the way they do to all people around the world. So with that said, Jennifer, I want to know more about your organization and what you do and how did it start?
Sure. Well, thank you very much for allowing me to join you. I have the privilege of working for Canine Companions for Independence as the Client Services Program Manager. And we are a national nonprofit organization that breeds, trains, and places service dogs with people with disabilities. So that's a wide spectrum of people that we serve. We work with adults and children, with veterans, and make those partnerships. And it's just a remarkable organization that places the dogs with the people and then provides follow-up care through the lifetime of the placement. So fortunate to get to work with many different people for a long period of time, and it's free for them, no charge for our services.
Talk about each individual group that you handle or that you work with. You mentioned that you work with soldiers and the military. And what do you do for them? What is really your role with some of the disabled veterans who come home after being in a really horrendous situation?
Yes, so we're very proud of the work that we do with veterans with PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. And it's a newer program for our organization, but we found a lot of success in working with people who may experience flashbacks or nightmares. And the dogs have been trained for a few different tasks that are incredibly important. So the dogs can do nightmare interruptions. If someone's in the middle of a nightmare, the dog has been trained to stop that process. And that can look a few different ways. It could be nudging their feet or pulling off the covers. It could be turning on a light switch to wake the person up. They can retrieve things like medication bottles. And then they're a partner out in public too, and can stand in front of the person or behind the person as a blocking technique. And so that actually first started with a partnership. We were involved with a study with the VA, and they commissioned a study to look at the effects of service dogs for veterans with PTSD. And out of that, we have incorporated that into the training that we do. It's still a new process, and it's available at certain areas or certain regions throughout the organization.
Jennifer, you know, you talked about these animals and their ability to do amazing things. I mean, just to be able to work with these military people, I mean, it's just incredible. How do you train these? That's probably a very difficult question because it's probably a process, but tell us a little bit about the process of how you train dogs to work with different groups.
Sure. So for our program, our dogs are first born into our organization. So we have a breeding program out in California at our national headquarters in Santa Rosa. And so the dogs, they are born for this program, and they begin their work very early on. We have a canine early development center and staff that work with the puppies from a very young age. And then they go to volunteer puppy raisers throughout the United States and work. It could be with a family, it could be an individual. We also have college programs that involve puppy raisers and prison systems where the inmates are training and working with the dogs. And so that lays the foundation for their training. Socialization is a very important part of our program. So the dogs are going out into public, they're practicing in a variety of settings and getting to know the different people, observing different sounds and sights and distractions. And then they come back to us in our regional training centers, and we have our professional training staff have the dogs for 6 months. And so they take the foundation that was laid with the puppy raisers and then begin to introduce the dogs to equipment. We practice with wheelchairs, with canes and crutches. We teach the dogs more than 40 commands. Some of that is positional next to the person and their equipment. It could also be retrieving dropped items, turning on and off light switches, pulling someone in a manual wheelchair. And so there's a lot of work that's involved with that, of course. And we want to make it fun and rewarding for the dogs so that they not only can they do the commands, but they really want to do the skills, and they're eager to work, and they're eager to interact with their handler and learn those tasks. So of course, each one takes time to lay the foundations and to practice, but it really is a fun and rewarding experience for the dogs and the trainers as they're learning new commands.
Are there specific dogs or type of dogs that are eligible to do the work that you're doing? I've seen, interestingly enough, I've seen certain dogs with people who are blind, and they seem to be really a very specific breed. So what is the best breed to work with people with disabilities?
Well, for our program, we use Labrador Retrievers and Golden Retrievers, and then a majority of our dogs are crosses of those two breeds. And so the idea is you've got that strong work ethic of a Lab and a more social, gentle nature of a Golden Retriever. And so with the crosses, you get the best of both worlds. There's not a limitation to the breeds as far as a type of dog that could become a service dog. But for our program, we found a lot of success with those two specific breeds. And so we work exclusively with them. But we also have our own breeding program. And so the temperament is very important. And so we can train for specific temperament qualities and fade out others to make sure that they're dogs that love the work, that love to be involved with their handler. So they're people dogs, but they're also hardy workers.
Sometimes you see in assisted living or independent living or nursing homes, people bringing in dogs to be with senior citizens who really are lonely and really, need something to kind of make them feel better. And I'm just wondering, what does the program look like that goes into nursing homes and works with elderly?
Sure. So there are some programs that might be more toward a therapy dog program, where there are some organizations that might use either pet dogs or therapy dog programs where they're bringing dogs in for visitation. And so with those types of programs, the temperament of the dog is crucial. That you have a gentle dog, a dog that's comfortable in a variety of environments, that's not bothered by the sounds or the scents in a new environment like that. And I think it's so important to have a dog that can be sensitive to the emotion in the room too. If there's someone who's very quiet or withdrawn, a dog that's really over the top or high energy might be a little bit much for them. And so having a dog that's sensitive to the emotion in the room and is available to be pet and interact, but also not pushy for that attention or that affection can be a really nice fit for the needs of the people.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing about teenagers, for example. Teenagers today, some of them really just don't have any particular hobby, and they don't have anything that really is a kind of situation where they feel that they're purposeful, that they have a purpose, that they're really they could do so many different things. Do you train teenagers or young people to work with dogs, because that'll give them some feeling of usefulness or purpose in their lives?
Sure. Well, with our volunteer puppy raising program, we do have volunteers from a wide variety of backgrounds, and that would include, we have teenagers who take this on as a family project or participate with their parents' guidance. And it can be a really wonderful project and way to give back to the community. There are so many things that you learn with puppy raising and with dog training in general that go far beyond just a skill set. You need to convey a sense of confidence to the dog. You walk with purpose. You're consistent in your expectations. You're ready to correct and you're ready to praise, depending on what the dog gives you. You're fair, you're demonstrating good leadership qualities for the dog to have their respect for you and to follow. And so we do see a lot of growth with our younger puppy raisers, and people comment that it's been just such a wonderful privilege to partake in that and to take this on as a family project, because you see maybe their son or daughter giving back to the community, growing in their own confidence, and learning to give back and to train and to put in so much work for someone that they've never met yet. They don't get to meet the recipient until, of course, the dog goes through the full training. And so that has such a profound impact on our puppy raisers. I would say what you've described too is maybe similar to some of our inmates who are working behind bars and also get to raise puppies for the organization, that you see their confidence grow, you see their sense of accomplishment and community grow, and that they say this is something that they've taken a lot of pride in and just are so thankful for the privilege of giving back and doing good for the community.
Yeah, you talked about people in jail, okay, and is overwhelming, totally overwhelming. But my question to you is, if somebody like somebody who is in jail and feels that when they get out, they have something to do, maybe volunteer for an organization like yours or another organization that works with dogs. Do you find that the recidivism rate for these people is much less?
We do. And for the programs that we've worked with specifically, even within the program at the prison facility, there is an interview process, an application process, and some criteria that they must meet to participate. And that scenario that you've described, we've seen play out. We've had a few inmates in particular I can think of that they first became aware of our program in the prison system and were a volunteer puppy raiser. And then when they left and they were released, they continued in that. And it's been a part of their life for many years. And they've been just wonderful role models for other puppy raisers too. And just to help us deliver a really high quality product, and these dogs that love to work and are well disciplined because they got such good training from their puppy raiser.
One of the things that I'd like to know is, when you work with dogs and you see people working with dogs, there must be a story behind some of the things that you've experienced. And I'm wondering if you can tell our audience an experience that really will stand out, because I'm sure there are many. So could you describe a particular situation where you were like just in awe or in shock because it was so amazing?
Sure. Well, I love that question. And you're right. I could think of many, many examples. One that stands out to me was several years ago. I served as a trainer full time before I moved into this role, and I had trained a dog. As we got to the end of the dog's training, we had identified the person that we believed he would be going to. And that gentleman came through class. And we were talking, and he just shared that as he'd gotten older, he noticed his reliance on other people going up. He was probably in his 60s at the time, and he had had a spinal cord injury years ago. And so he was paralyzed and used a manual wheelchair. And that can definitely take its toll on someone physically. With his shoulders specifically, is getting achy as he aged. And he talked about how important it was for him to be independent and live independently and do the things he needs to do. And he was a little bit hesitant about the pull command, and that's a command where a dog is pulling someone in a manual wheelchair. So they have a specialized harness, and the person can hold on and the dog helps to take over some of that mobility. So it can help reduce the strain and the wear and tear on the person's arms because the dog is helping with that mobility aspect. And so I assured him that this dog loved pull, was a great puller, and I thought it would be a really great fit for him. And he was, a little hesitant. Okay, well, we'll see. And so we stepped out into the parking lot and, had the dogs harnessed up, ready to go. And I just remember starting that process, and I had to run to keep up with them. They were going down the parking lot, and I just remember him cheering and a smile on his face. He had tears in his eyes. He said, "Wow, he really loves to pull." And I said, "Yeah, he's a great puller." And he goes, "Oh my goodness, this is going to make such a big difference. You have no idea." And just to get to celebrate with him, in the parking lot, and just the joy on his face as he was flying through the air, it was just such a great memory. And I'm so proud of that dog, and of course, and just so grateful to celebrate that with him too, and that just realizing the impact that would make for him.
Jennifer, that's a real stunning story because, sometimes it's just the opposite where people who are handicapped just don't know what to do with themselves and they can't handle life anymore. And look at the possibilities if they work with a dog. It's just amazing. Now, this is a little controversial, and I can't help asking you this, but how do you feel when people take little dogs and not so little sometimes, big ones as well, they go on an airplane and they call it a service dog? How do you feel about that? Because, I look around and I say, wait a minute. I mean, I understand that they love their dog. I understand that they feel that their dog should go with them. But on the other hand, why should they be allowed to be on an airplane and call themselves a service dog? What's your thoughts about that?
Yeah, well, we've definitely seen that discussion come up more and more over the past several years as an organization. And we actually hear from our graduates who maybe have been questioned about bringing their dog, or they hear the stories from businesses that are very leery or hesitant because they've seen bad behavior from pet dogs that are being allowed into businesses. And, I think that's a multifaceted issue. I think there are some people who just don't know what the law says, and, they think it's a harmless endeavor. It's a way to perhaps get out of a fine or a fee, to charge for a pet that's flying, or maybe in a hotel room, something like that, or a rental car company. And then there are some people, I think, who they just don't consider what the impact of that is for someone who truly does need the services of a service animal. And so a lot of it is just education and making people aware that a service dog has a very defined role, that they've been trained to do physical tasks for the benefit of someone with a disability to help mitigate that. And so it's not just a pet dog, it's not just a companion dog, that a service dog has been trained and can make a huge difference in someone's ability to go into public and to live independently. So, it can be frustrating at times when you see people who just, either take advantage of the availability of a vest, or bring their dog and think, oh, this isn't that big of a deal. I'm not hurting anyone. It's just convenience sake that we're doing this. But a lot of times, just to help people understand the importance of a service dog's role can be really helpful and beneficial in helping them understand that this is something that's available to help someone with a disability. Park in a space they're not supposed to park, or take advantage of other resources for someone who has a disability. And so sometimes kind of framing it that way and saying, well, you wouldn't do this. Why would you take advantage of this resource? Or why would you bring a pet dog into a facility that's not really trained for that? So yeah, just helping people understand the importance of what a service dog does.
Yeah. Jennifer, let me ask you something. This is a kind of controversial question, which I think is very important because people are talking all about it. And that is people who go on planes and bring their little dogs and they call them service dogs. Now, is that fair? I mean, because there are people who need these dogs, and it takes away sort of the importance of having a dog on an airplane. What do you think about that?
Well, you're right. It is a growing concern. We've heard from many of our graduates who have seen dogs more frequently when they do travel, and sometimes dogs that are not well behaved, sometimes dogs that seem very overwhelmed in that situation. And it's because they haven't been trained for that purpose. And we do have a lot of people who are taking advantage of the law and may want to bring along a pet dog. And we have called that service dog fraud as an organization. And that's been an ongoing topic for our graduates, for our program. It's interesting because just recently the Air Carriers Access Act was modified, and so it more aligns with the Americans with Disabilities Act now. And so I think airlines are recognizing the purpose and the role of service animals and really wanting to protect that and make sure that if an animal is traveling, it is truly a service dog, one that has been trained for physical tasks that helps to mitigate the effects of a disability. So I do think as we move forward, we'll see more and more airlines that are taking that to heart and really wanting to support the work of service dogs while also limiting the access of pet dogs that don't have the same level of training.
Also, I mean, this is like really a little funny, but it's the truth. When I look around, and I happen to be in Florida, and I notice people that have little dogs in carriages. Now, I can't tell you how weird that is. And well, we're allowed to do whatever we want. We live in a free democracy here. But on the other hand, isn't that really bad for the dogs?
Well, it's interesting. I think with the smaller breeds, especially, you're right. We definitely see that more and more. I've seen that more as I go out. And I think, with an organization, we really focus on the health and well-being of our dogs. And we really focus on meeting the dog's needs every day. And part of that, of course, is exercise and having just a physical outlet for the dog's energy and their attention, as well as psychologically and mentally, it can be so helpful to have that outlet. So, I think sometimes people are wanting to do the right thing. They really love their dog. Of course, they want to bring the dog along, and maybe they forget about the exercise component or the importance of letting the dog be out and have that outlet for their energy. As far as working in that capacity, though, it's important to remember that not all disabilities are visible and easily identifiable. Sometimes there are hidden disabilities, and so it could be that a dog has been trained as a service animal, but it's not immediately apparent what their job is to the average person.
Are you referring to the fact that people who have psychological issues really can use a dog and love that dog, and it can help them with their psychological problems? Are you referring to that?
Well, there are psychiatric service animals that have been task trained. So it could be to interrupt anxiety or retrieve medication, something like that. Or it also might be a medical alert. So, for example, a dog that's been trained to identify when the person's blood sugar has changed. Someone who experiences very high highs or very low lows with their blood sugar, that wouldn't be immediately apparent to someone else. And so, we do advise people just to consider that it could be that the dog has been trained and you just don't know what that skill is, or it doesn't appear that they're a working dog, but there still is that category of dogs that their role is maybe for alerts, and it could be something that's a hidden disability.
Yeah, and what about nutrition? Again, you see people feeding their dogs food. I mean, actual food, like if they have a leftover steak or whatever they're eating, they give to their dogs. What about that? Do you think that it's more important to give dogs good food? And when I say good food, it's food for dogs rather than the human food, if you will?
Well, we do advise our graduates that diet is very important to a service dog's working career. We like to think of our dogs as the Olympic athletes of the dog world, that they are very fit and trim. they have exercise needs. They're sometimes very physically involved in the work that they do. And so we definitely encourage our graduates to stick with a high quality dog food and to feed that consistently. We don't want our dogs eating people food. We want them to stick with the dog food that's going to set them up for the best success physically so that they can do the job that they're designed to do.
That sounds great. Well, I always give my guests the last word. So is there something that you'd like to tell our audience, Jennifer?
Well, I would just reiterate, thank you for allowing me to be here. If someone is curious about our program, we have a lot of great resources and information on our website. It's Canine Companions for Independence. If you go to cci.org and then click Assistance Dogs, there's a lot of information about our program specifically. And then there's also great resources and great programs out there that may be trained for other things that we don't train our dogs to do. But it's really exciting to think about the role of service animals and how that has grown over the years and the different ways that dogs are helping people, the tasks that they've been trained to do, and to really celebrate that partnership. I get to see that firsthand every day, and I'm very thankful for that. And just encourage, your listeners, your supporters, as they encounter people out in public or they see service animals at work, to celebrate that too. It's perfectly fine to ask questions or to engage the person in conversation and get to learn more about how dogs are being used to serve people with disabilities. It really is exciting to see all the different things that they're being trained to do.
Our guest today has been Jennifer Haynes, who is the Client Services Program Manager for Canine Companions, an organization that is absolutely amazing, that does so many different things with dogs and with people with disabilities. I mean, they do so much that, needless to say, I would love if they would everybody would listen to what Jennifer said and get in touch with them and find out all the information that they could offer you if you want to have a dog. This show is sponsored by Dillon Mitchell at fullpotentialcanine.com. We're very pleased and very happy that they're doing this. Thank you very much for our show, Dillon.